Hello, everyone. Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. We have a really great chat for you, but I think we're just going to give it a few more minutes to let more folks filter in and give the folks that can join us live today the opportunity to not miss a second. So I usually like to say, enjoy this introductory slide, and we have a great chat for you today. Okay. All right. Well, my name is Jenna Quinn, and it is my pleasure as the Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement to welcome you all to this edition of the 49er Industry Chat Series. Before we start, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. We just want to inform you all that this session is being recorded, and that means that it's going to be available for you on demand on our website at www.csulb.edu/alumni. Since this is a webinar format, we encourage all of you that are here today with us live to use the Q&A box to submit your questions for our guest speaker today. And we'll be asking those questions throughout the presentation. So don't wait, just go ahead and when you have a question, just throw it in. And with that, I'm happy to welcome our guest speaker today, Kathy Magaña-Gomez. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, everybody.
Let me start off by reading your bio for everyone, Kathy.
Okay.
Kathy is many things, but first and foremost, she is a proud Latina who's a first-generation Mexican-American and the first in her family to attend college. Earning a master's degree in Communicative Disorders with an emphasis on Speech-Language Pathology, she offers 20 years of clinical experience in public schools. Kathy's passion for serving culturally and linguistically diverse populations reaches beyond public schools to her private practice that focuses on providing speech therapy services to pediatric clients from diverse backgrounds. Kathy has extensive experience in Spanish bilingual assessment and intervention, Gestalt language processing with autistic populations, early intervention, childhood apraxia of speech, and parent education. In addition, she is an advocate for the importance of play in child's development. Kathy is a member of the American Speech Hearing Association and licensed in California. She is an ASHA ACE award recipient and proudly serves as part of the merely 8% of the speech-language pathology profession community who are minoritized. So please welcome today's 49er Industry Chat host, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Jenna. Thank you for that introduction. I'm really excited to be here today to talk about something that I'm so passionate about. I love my profession, and I'm super excited to be speaking about my profession during Hispanic Heritage Month. I'm a very proud Latina.
Awesome. So happy to have you.
Thank you.
Kathy, if we can just diving right into it, if you could share with us a little bit about, what brought you, you're a CSULB alumni.
Yes.
What brought you here to CSULB? How did you get here?
You want the long story or the short version?
Let's go with the better version.
Okay. Well, I'm a graduate from a very long time ago, but it started in 1996. I was graduating from junior college, Harbor Junior College. I'm a Gardena girl from the South Bay, and I was attending junior college for kind of a long time. I was a little bit older than most kids start, university these days. But anyway, I was finishing with my AA degree with no obvious talent or interest or, even clarity of what I needed to do next. I wasn't really sure or familiar with university, how to apply or what to do. So I went to the counselor at my junior college, and I kind of asked him, like, okay, what do I do next? I'm graduating. I've taken every course possible at the junior college. What should I do next? And he's like, well, what are you interested in? And I'm like, I have no idea. So he's like, well, let's give you a test and see what you would match with. So it was actually a Myers-Briggs type indicator test, which I sat there and it was Scantron style. I filled in those bubbles and handed him that Scantron and he ran it through the machine. And he looks at it and he's like, well, this is interesting. This never happens. Your personality compared to men and women, it has the #1 ranking profession as a match, speech-language pathology.
Oh.
And I said, and I'm like, what's speech-language pathology? And he said, I have no idea. He's like, why don't you go to our library and ask for a book about it? So that's exactly what I did. I went to the library and I asked the librarian for a book on speech-language pathology, and she looked through her little Dewey Decimal System cards and found one book, and it was about this thin, and she found it for me. And I read it, I think within 10 minutes, and I thought, I could do that. Okay. So I honestly don't remember. Oh, I think I, asked the counselor, well, I know what it is now. What college do I go to study this? And so he must have directed me to Cal State Long Beach. I actually don't remember specifics. And so I did. I drove myself over to Cal State Long Beach and I registered myself and I got my little package to attend the Student Opportunity and Access Program. So the SOAP orientation.
Gotcha.
And yeah,
I think we have a different name for it now, but
do you? Oh, see, that's how old school I am. So this was 1996. It was called SOAP. I was so impressed by the university and the experience, and I had never been on a university campus or in a hall of that size. And so, yeah, I was kind of intimidated and kind of nervous, and I immediately made a friend. And to this day, she is my best friend.
oh my goodness.
Yes, and she too is a speech-language pathologist.
Okay, yeah, that was kind of my follow-up question. Was she?
Yes.
Did you guys go through classes together? And
it's so funny how the universe works. We met and we just kind of stuck together. She was another Latina, younger than me, and we kind of just hung out together. They must have put us in groups based on our majors. So we must have been in the Communicative Disorders group, which was probably just the two of us at the time. And anyway, we bonded and we kind of hung out with each other during that orientation, and we've been friends ever since. So Cal State Long Beach provided not only my degree, one of my degrees, but my very best friend.
oh, wow. I love that. That's such a great story. Yeah,
there's more.
Well, tell me.
So I got into the program. Like I said, I had done all of my undergrad work. My general prerequisites. So I went straight into the undergrad program, the Communicative Disorders program. And I was working full time, and I was going to school full time, and it was really, really challenging. And I think after my first semester or so, I was offered a linguistically different cultural diversity grant from that was spearheaded by Dr. Carolyn Conway Madding at the time. And she was a professor within the department. And she was one of those professors that had a perspective that seemed, well, in my perspective, she was the only professor that seemed to be aware that there was a need for cultural diversity in the field. And so she had this grant available and offered it to me. And of course, I accepted with gratitude, and I was able to quit my full-time job and focus on my studies full-time. And so I was attending classes on upper campus and in the Communicative Disorders program. It was a very, very, very rigorous program. But I got through it, and I had my new BFF that I had met at orientation. So we kind of just plugged along.
Awesome. Yeah. And was it a quick program, a long program? Did you?
Mm-hmm. Well, because I had done all of my general courses at the junior college, it took me 2 years. So I started in 96 and I graduated with my BA in Communicative Disorders in 98. It was a very rigorous program. very rigorous, and I'm sure to this day it is. You know, I always think that anybody who has a degree in speech language pathology must be a very dedicated person and take their academics very seriously, because it's a tough field to study. And you know, there's classes in linguistics and anatomy and physiology, neuroscience, phonology, and the hearing sciences. So the coursework is quite rigorous.
Yeah, and it sounds, I mean, incredibly diverse, right? In such a, it's a complex sort of profession, right? Because it's not just one thing, it's many things.
It is many things. Yes, we cover so many areas within our license, from articulation, phonology, fluency, you know, cognitive issues, expressive language, receptive language, voice. It's just, there's just so swallowing. There's just so many areas within our license that we could practice in. It's impossible to know everything within every area that we cover. So, you know, for me, what I like to specialize in is early intervention. Just like you mentioned in my bio, Gestalt language processing. Those are like my passions. Bilingual assessment is my passion. Serving the bilingual community is my passion. And that's where I like to work, at the top of my license.
Well, I think that's a perfect transition into, then you have a little bit of something prepared for us. The talk is, after all,
I do.
Focused on the profession at large, and the kind of the lack of diversity in the field. So please go ahead and share with us your slides.
Okay, give me 1 second. One second. Technical difficulties, of course.
Of course, that's okay. And we have just as you're doing that, then we did have a question in the chat. You can answer it now or later. But hi, Ms. Gomez. It's good to see you. I don't know who this is from, but it is good to see you.
Thank you.
Can you talk about what made you want to start a private practice as well as be a school-based SLP? And how is that different? How is that work different from working in the school? So if that's, if you want to answer that now, or if you're going to go through it in your presentation.
No, I could answer it now. Okay. So the first part was what made me go into private practice?
Yeah, what made you want to start going into private practice?
So I actually I've been in the school since I graduated with my master's. I got my master's in 2003 from Northridge. And I've always worked in the schools, but I wanted to have different experiences other than the elementary age. That was one reason I got into private practice. I also wanted to see kids younger. So I wanted that early intervention age from birth to 3, because for speech language pathologists, we truly can serve people from through their entire lifespan, especially now that people are living longer. There is a need for speech paths from the crib to the casket, like really. So that was one reason why I started private practice. And, income. We wanted to have certain financial flexibility. And so it was nice to have that extra income. Those were the main reasons. And I love serving the Hispanic population and people of color. And I found that through my private practice, I could focus on that.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. And I wish I could say it's nice to see you too. I can't see you. To whoever said it, but thank you.
Whoever it was. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So yeah, I really wanted to take the time today and take advantage of this invitation to talk about the industry I'm in and chat about the need for diversity and representation in speech language pathology. And but first, before I go into that, I want to just share with you that recently, this year, US News ranked the 100 best jobs. And of the 100 best jobs, speech language pathology ranked third in best healthcare jobs. So out of all those healthcare jobs, you know, pediatrician and nurse, speech language pathology ranked third. And out of the 100 list, it ranks 10th. So it is a very fruitful profession to be in from a financial standpoint and from an engagement standpoint. You know, I'm always learning something new. I'm always improving, and I'm always challenged. And I think that's one of the things I love most about the profession.
All that from a Scantron.
All that from a Scantron. Right. Yes, that's going to be my next bio. All this from a Scantron.
Perfect talk title.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, it is a great profession to be in if you're considering changing professions, or if you are mentoring someone that isn't quite sure where to go next. I highly encourage you to guide them towards speech language pathology, especially if they're a person of color. And here's why. Well, actually, after this, here's why. In terms of employment, you really speech language pathology is pretty much a new field compared to other professions. So you can really carve out your own employment if you wanted to. For me, working in the schools worked for my family. I'm a mother and a wife, and so I wanted to have the school calendar flexibility, and I wanted to have a pension too. So I work in the school system, but I also wanted to have, as I mentioned, private practice to just be able to serve whomever I wanted to and how I wanted to. And so for employment purposes, you can have a private practice or work for someone that has a private practice, working in the school system as a speech language pathologist, from preschool to high school or adult transition classes. You can work in the hospital setting. And you can also, use your degree and pursue a PhD and work in a university as a professor or a researcher. And then something I never did, which, I kind of regret, but it was probably because I was older, an older student, was there's so many young girls coming out of younger people coming out of the profession, and they're traveling and they're using their license kind of around the world, using their knowledge of the field abroad. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you definitely have an opportunity to kind of carve out whatever type of employment you want to.
And evidently, I mean, as in your case, some combination thereof, right? Like you're not limited to just one.
You're not limited to just one. You could actually do all of them. You could work per diem in a hospital. You can work part-time in a school setting. You can own your private practice. In the summers, you could travel to Haiti and provide speech language pathology services in another country. And you could be a part-time lecturer at Cal State Long Beach.
So true.
The world is your oyster, and never sleep. The world of speech pathology is your oyster. Yes. So it's a great field to have steady employment.
Well, and I noticed that you had said you corrected yourself, but then you first said young girls coming into the field. And I think that's kind of, it shouldn't be accurate, but it almost is, right?
It is so accurate. And I caught myself like, oh, it's what I see, Yes. I want to share with you this speech language pathology demographic profile that I got from ASHA. ASHA is our association, the Speech and Hearing Association. And I looked at their stats for 2021, and it hasn't changed much, to be honest with you, from when I graduated in 2003 with my master's, in 98 when I graduated with my bachelor's.
Wow.
The demographic is, 91.4% white, 6.3% Hispanic. And then our Black African American population, 3.7%, and Asians at 3%. So, the numbers are that people of color are not represented in this field. and hence the title of my presentation, that there is a need for cultural representation in the field.
And, you know, and feel free to answer this now or to answer it at another point in time throughout this, but, you know, you look at this graph, right? And you look at how the ratio of women to men, and you kind of just wonder why. Like, what are those barriers? You know, I know that that's a big question, and you're certainly not the authority on it, but just kind of what you observe in the field, being a practitioner, what are these barriers? Why do we see this?
Well, let me just
share
some clarity first. This is a representation of race. So I'm not sure what, I am sure actually, I'll tell you in a minute, but this is a race representation. In terms of men and women, 95.6 identify as female. And let's see here. That's a big number. Yeah, 95.6 are female. And so your question was, tell me again, Jenna, what your question was?
Being a practitioner, you know, what are some of the barriers for folks, the people of color and other folks who would clearly be a huge value add to the field? Yes. Why aren't they coming to the table?
Such a good question. I think one of them is just what my counselor said. What is speech language pathology? Like, nobody knows about this profession. I don't think it's, you know, on the radar from any high school counselor or really anybody who doesn't have a relative or a friend that's in the field to consider it, or if their family members haven't experienced it. It's just not something that people think about because it's not really popular. That's one of the barriers, just lack of knowing what the profession is. I think another barrier is that, you know, it's just, I'm trying to think of like, I don't think it sounds lucrative, maybe like, oh, it's that you can't do much with it. What are you going to do with something like that? But I think the main reason is that people of color just don't know about the profession because it's not kind of presented to them.
So we had a question coming from the chat. What do you think about a career as an SLPA? And so I guess maybe you can try to also tag that as like a, you know, what would you say to other folks of color who, you know, what would you tell them about your career and what you think about the career and why they should join?
I would say, well, I think a career as an SLPA is a great career. Assistants are highly needed and there's a really great job market for them. I would say if you're a person of color or really anybody, but, you know, I guess, you know, I really want to recruit and encourage people of color to look into the profession. So if you could continue your studies, go for it. Go for the master's in speech language pathology. I promise you, you won't have any regrets. Especially if you speak another language other than English. It's so needed in the field. If we look at this next slide here, I looked at just Long Beach Unified and the student diversity, you know, of the district. And we see that Hispanic students make up the majority of the population in Long Beach Unified. This is just Long Beach Unified alone. And then our Black African-American population, you know, follows. So you see the disproportion where our speech language pathologists working in the schools are mostly white, yet they're serving Hispanic kids, Black kids, Asian kids. And I think it's wonderful that they are, but it would be awesome if we can get people of color into the profession so our clients could see themselves in the person that's working with them.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, like, why? Like, what do you see as a practitioner? I know my question's always why, but what do you see as a practitioner is the benefit to students, and what's the benefit to their families? Because, right, families are a big part of this.
They are, yeah. So, from personal experience, when I have worked with in the school setting and privately, when I have worked with a family that were of the same culture, were of the same language, because I speak Spanish, I have had parents tell me, I feel so much more at ease, or I feel more comfortable, or I'm so glad you speak Spanish, or I'm so glad you understand why we do this, because there's cultural understanding, and there's trust. They see themselves I see myself in them. When I've worked in the schools, I've worked in many, many districts, because I worked for LA County Office of Education. And I worked, when I was with LACO, I worked primarily with the Latino population. And many times, almost every single time, when I met with the family to talk to them about, heavy stuff, like what the child was eligible for under special education law and what I was finding for my assessment, I saw my parents in these families, or I saw my aunts and my uncles in these families. There was an understanding. And so when you're talking about, a person's child, there's an increased trust when you can relate with one another. And I think when we have diversity and representation in the field, we bring unique perspectives, things that our white colleagues never experienced because they don't come from our culture. And so we bring a unique perspective to the field, and that alone enriches the profession. We add value to the profession when we have diversity, whether it's a Black SLP, a Latina SLP, an Asian SLP, an Indian SLP. All of these viewpoints add value to what we do and who we are as a community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think having an understanding and perspective of what our clients go through is unique for people of color. So
it's really important.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and what is that? I know you touched on it, but what is it? What is it like working with the families, right? What is it like to have a career where, you don't just have a client, you have a client plus pretty much everyone who cares about them, right? What is that like?
It could be challenging, but it's also empowering. So when I see private clients and I go into their homes, I'm working not only with the child, but I'm working with the whole family, because the number one teachers are the parents. So I'm really doing a lot of parent coaching, especially with my little ones, giving them the tools so they can implement it with their child, because I'm only there for an hour. Then I leave, and then they're going to carry on and hopefully practice what we worked on together. Yeah, so, but working with the whole family is probably one of my favorite things. Actually, one of the highlights of my professional career has been parent education classes, which I loved, and really getting to know families and giving them tools and suggestions and providing them with the skills and the tool set to be able to enrich their child's life linguistically is, pretty satisfying.
Love it.
So yeah, I just, I wanted to share this information with you all, and to just let you know that speech-language pathology is an amazing profession. It's filled with lots of women and some men now, but we're all very, very passionate about it. And I would encourage people of color to look into the profession, because there is a need for representation. There's 8% of us that represent people of color in this field, and the community we serve, the people we serve, are much more diverse than what the field is made up of. And so we have to increase the diversity in the field to serve the diverse population across the nation, really, but specifically in California.
Wonderful. And so we have another question that came in. How did COVID affect the work that you do, and how has it changed the field?
Oh, COVID. Darn that COVID.
You're going into folks' homes, you're going to the schools, right? So when that was interrupted,
oh man,
what did you do?
That's when everybody, got really savvy with Zoom and telehealth. So with my private practice, I did telehealth. Okay. I saw my clients through Zoom, telehealth.
And did you do a lot of telehealth before COVID, or?
No, me specifically, no. So it was so new to me. And then in the school system, so in the schools, I actually don't do therapy right now. For the last 4 years, I have been a diagnostician. And what that means is that I assess children transitioning from one service to another, coming into the school district. So I was during COVID, to answer your question, I was going into the school 1 day a week to meet those families, to assess their child, in full PPE, gown, gloves, mask, when it was in its peak, and assessing the child. And then we would hold their meeting, or it's called an IEP. We would hold their IEP through a Zoom platform to go over the findings and offer what the child was eligible for. So yeah, it was really quite difficult and taxing and exhausting.
And I imagine just the use of masks, right? Like, it's so much of speech language pathology is physically being able to see.
Yes. So we had shields. It was very difficult, to say the least. And we, I don't even have the words for it, to be honest with you. It was just something that we had to do, and we had to accommodate as best as we could. And families were incredibly understanding, but also incredibly worried, because they wanted their child assessed and to receive services if they qualified. And so it's been difficult.
Now, are you seeing any maybe like folks who maybe put off having their child go see someone because of the concerns and maybe a backlog, or even just like the changes from, is telehealth here to stay? Like, are those still happening?
So in my school district,
what are the long-term impacts?
In my school district, we're seeing kids in person, and there was a wait list, at least from an assessment standpoint. We were backlogged on assessing. Many of the kids that we had on the docket to assess, to test, they would cancel because a family member got COVID or the child got COVID. And so it was a constant backlog. And now we're seeing kiddos who, just didn't have social exposure during that whole COVID moment. So we're trying to differentiate, is it this, or is it lack of exposure? And figuring it out, sometimes is challenging when you meet with the families and you're doing the interview and they're saying, we didn't leave our house for 2 years. We just started leaving. We just started going on play dates. We just started going to the park. We don't take that, lightly, because this is a child that hasn't been exposed to so many things because of COVID.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like we have someone interested in studying abroad. What are some experiences or resources and websites that you can share about programs for SLPs who are interested in working abroad? Maybe did your friend ever work abroad?
My friend My best friend, she's a bilingual diagnostician, speech-language pathologist in Maryland. And she's a professor at the University of Maryland, and she works for the county. Yeah, I told you you could like really just create your own jobs. Smilesforspeech.com is one of them. They, the gal who runs that program, she goes to like Ghana and Nigeria quite often. Smiles for Speech, and then the other website would be Bilinguistics, because I know they just did a trip as well, I think to Belize.
Wow.
Those are the two that just pop into my head right now. Darn, I didn't think of adding that resource.
Well,
Jenna,
you know, Alana did put it in the chat, so it's smilesforspeech.com.
yes, while I'm thinking, I will look it up really quick. But Jenna, I wanted to circle back about your question in terms of students going into the field, like what the barriers are. Mm-hmm. I could only speak for myself from a first generation perspective. One of the barriers was I just didn't know what to do next. Like I didn't have anybody to guide me, to tell me, these are the universities, let's go talk to this person. So just lack of knowing or having a resource. And at that time, you know, we didn't have the internet. So I had to drive somewhere to, you know, or go to the library.
Brave the 405.
Yeah, exactly. So it was really like just not knowing what to do next, not having a mentor to help guide me. That was a barrier for me. Not knowing about the profession, not even receiving guidance. I had to search for it. It wasn't, not that it should have fallen onto my lap, but really not even having information given to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
About like, these are your options. You could do this or that.
And actually coming into this, right? Like kind of playing into that, someone was asking in the chat, what would you recommend for students of color who, you know, are studying and they're trying to get ready for grad school, or, you know, they're trying to figure out how to put their best foot forward. Like, how do they stand out and be competitive? If you could act as that guide for a moment, right? Like
this is how I go through life in everything I do. Set your intention, be clear on what your intention is. And yes, the intention is everything. So as long as you're clear in your intention, what you want to accomplish, everything will fall into place. As long as you're being like honest with yourself and you're just doing everything you need to do to stay on track. Don't take no for an answer. You don't know how many times I was told, you know, consider another degree, or maybe go into audiology instead of speech-language pathology, or maybe you should consider this major instead of speech-language pathology. It just happened. So, you know, that's just noise. You tell me I can't, watch me and I will. So, you know, use that noise as fire and fuel to propel you forward. Stay true to who you are. Try your very best. Give it your very best. Seek out mentors. Honestly, I was so blessed to have the best mentors. I probably could not have done this degree without mentorship. So I would highly encourage you to seek a mentor. Go ahead, Jenna. Yeah.
A question just came up and it said, did you have any mentors at CSULB? Right as you were saying that. So,
you know, my years,
talk about those mentors.
Yeah, I had 2 years at CSULB in my undergrad. I would say Dr. Carolyn Conway Madding was a mentor. She's the professor who had the grant, and we would meet with her in her home, and you know, we would discuss topics within the field and you know, within our course of study. she was a mentor because she made me feel like she validated me. She validated where I came from. I didn't come from a family of, alumni. I didn't come from, my experience was so different from the majority of people in the ComDis program. It was completely different. So she validated who I was. And she honored that I spoke another language. It's a hot commodity to speak Spanish. So she was a mentor to me. My BFF that I met in my program was a mentor to me because we helped each other out. We encouraged each other. So I would suggest you find like-minded people that propel you forward and are proud of your accomplishments and want you to succeed. Another mentor, I wouldn't say mentor, but someone who really had an impact on me during my time at Cal State Long Beach was Dr. Kenworthy, O.T. Kenworthy. He was my audiology professor. And he was awesome. And, I had this one experience with him where, do you want the quick story?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Dr. Kenworthy, so my best friend and I were studying vigorously, long hours in the building at ComDis, and he had late office hours, and he would see us studying all the time. And, never really pointed it out, and he never said anything about it. But one day, Karen, her name is Karen, my BFF, she asked me a question about what we were studying, and I didn't know the answer to it. It had nothing to, we didn't think it was going to be on the test. It wasn't on the syllabus of things you should study, but it was like, oh, I don't know that about hearing. Why does that happen? And so he was in his office. So we both went over there and we're like, Dr. Kenworthy, we're studying for the final or midterm, but we want to know this. Why does this happen with hearing? And his eyes widened and he's like, that's not on the study guide. And we're like, yeah, we know, but we just want to know why that is. And so he sat us down and told us why that was. And we were, happy to hear the answer and like, oh, okay, we understood it. And it was a great conversation. The next day is the midterm. And, I'm shaking and nervous and my pencils are all sharpened and I'm ready to go. And he hands out the midterm and I go through it. And the last question was the question we asked him in his office the night before. And if you knew the answer to that, you didn't have to answer the rest of the questions. You got an automatic, like A, I think, I don't remember. And my brain exploded. Like Karen and I just looked at each other like, no way. And we, of course, she and I answered everything on the midterm plus that question. And it was like the coolest thing ever. And when I looked up at him, when I saw the question and he winked, like, isn't that cool? So,
that is awesome.
All that to say,
go ahead.
No, all that to say that he wasn't my mentor, but he got me. He appreciated that we weren't just thinking for the test. We were critically thinking about the subject matter, not just thinking to pass a test. And he appreciated that. So how that applies to me now and in my profession is when I'm mentoring a grad student or someone who just graduated and is doing their clinical fellowship here, I'm looking at their critical thinking. I'm engaging them in critical thinking as well. And I learned that from Dr. Kenworthy.
That's so wonderful. I was going to say that's not just a plug for being a curious, studious student, but also reading all the questions first.
Right.
Because you could have just went to the end and
I could have, right? Yeah.
So as we're wrapping up, we have this one last question. It's kind of long, but the enthusiasm is just coming through, so I got to ask it.
Okay.
Amen about the barriers. What
Yes.
would you suggest to someone who got their BS or BA in something other than communicative disorders? And would you suggest starting from scratch and going into an SLP assistant program or going into an SLP master's program?
I would say go talk to the counselor, see what you can do. I believe it's called post-bac, when you have a BA in something and then you just take a few more courses to get your BA in speech pathology, ComDis speech pathology. I would say talk to people who've done that and see. Yeah, talk to someone about it, talk to the counselors, talk to the chair of the department. And I say go for gold.
Go for gold.
I think SLPAs are awesome. We need them in the field, but if you have the time, if you have the financial means, if you have the drive, go for gold. The two smartest things I ever did in my life are get a degree in speech language pathology and marry my husband, in that order. Those are the two smartest things I ever did.
Sorry, babe, you're number 2.
Yes. No, really, because, you know, as a woman and as a person of color, having this degree, I would be, oh, sorry, that was my timer. I could financially provide for myself. Right?
Yeah, no.
So
absolutely.
without the degree, I wouldn't be able to. And not only that, I love going to work every day. I'm passionate about it. I've made amazing friends. There's so many amazing women in this field and men. Like, yeah.
And
I say go for gold.
join Kathy, everyone.
Please. And if you speak another language, please look into the field.
Awesome. Well, Kathy, thank you so much for your time today. This has been just a fantastic talk. I got to almost none of my questions because everyone was so engaged with the questions that they were putting in the Q&A. So thank you all so much for your participation. If you have any questions, Kathy had her email on that slide, so you can go ahead and send her an email. Kathy, I'm not putting words in your mouth, right?
No, please, I welcome you to
And
email me.
Are you on LinkedIn or maybe even Beach Nexus or CSULB LinkedIn?
I'm not CSULB LinkedIn, but tell me how to do that.
Oh, 1000%. We will get you hooked up with that.
I want to thank you, Jenna, for inviting me to this. It was so much fun. I'm very passionate about the profession, and I hope that I encouraged and informed people who tuned in.
Absolutely. You definitely did.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. That's our time. And thank you so much, Kathy, if you could stick back while everyone filters out. Thanks, guys, so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.